Yeah.
That's usually,
Huh.
if they want to give you this filling station in here if you want, tell them heck with that if you don't want
The one, the old BP filling
it.
station?
Yeah. Okay, reason why that sold, they figure it's gonna cost $150,000, whoever buys it. before
They got the old tanks?
got the fuel tank underneath, yeah, you got a full tank, and
Mhm.
they figure it's $150,000 in the full tank.
Oh, yeah. That's expensive. And then if the dirt has any contamination beyond a certain point, they have to dig the dirt out too and put it in a special landfill.
That's, why don't they just heat the dirt?
I was gonna say-
Burn the dirt.
Well, that's the EPA. They're not interested in helping. They're not interested in helping. Okay, see, according to this, I'm broadcasting and it's straight. So everything I have when I'm broadcasting on YouTube indicates that it's straight. But when somebody watches it on YouTube, it comes out backwards. But see, I have no way of knowing that. And there's no setting that I've been able to find that'll straighten that out. So, at any rate, and is that me beeping or somebody else beeping? I don't know. And it's whether I use the Chromebook or this. You know. Actually, with this, the underlying program we determined has it reversed, but the YouTube is straight. When I do the Chromebook, there's no underlying program, and it's straight in the YouTube broadcast that I see. But even on the Chromebook, I think it comes out reversed when somebody watches it. So I don't know what to do here, and I'm just trying to get this out of the way here. There, you can wave and show that there's somebody here other than me. So there we are. But we're trying to get started, and we have everybody down there. Yeah. And I have to move it this way so that I can see the screen while we're doing this. So, at any rate, I do have that on here somewhere, I thought. There it is. All right. Well, I guess we're good to go. We're going. I guess Anita's coming back with Lauren and Christopher sometime this weekend. So we just got word from that. Well, they're still in New York right now. They may leave tonight. They may leave tomorrow. Probably tomorrow night. So
We'll have no warning before the actual show.
well, if they go in here in sometime, they go in on the scrapbook because we'll be upstairs.
What part of New York are they? You should.
Is that 314? Did she say 314?
319.
319. We're going to be upstairs Sunday on the third floor. The suite that's directly above this on the third floor. I think Kim thinks it might be 319. But if you remember, it's directly above this. Or above, actually, out on that section. And so when you get up and you come off the elevators, you have to obviously turn right. You can't go in the other direction, then turn left. And straight down the hall takes you right to the door. So most of us have been there before. So we didn't know until tonight whether we're going to be on the third floor or the fourth floor. So we'll be on the third floor. At least we can enjoy the fall leaves because they're really looking nice this week. They've peaked about 5 days later.
Well, nice testimony right now.
What's that?
Finally, the headache, splitting headache we had the whole day, or low grade, I should say, finally alleviated.
Oh, very good.
All those things that you have to wake up with and to pop something to try to alleviate it, it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
You get like a migraine, right?
I don't think it's a migraine.
Um,
Sinus infection.
Just to let everybody know how did a wonderful job yesterday at Columbus. Doing the prayer before the representative.
Representative Bill Romer, who he lives here in Richfield. It's interesting because my dad was born on his grandparents' farm, and he now lives on my grandparents' farm.
Oh, wow.
So we've had family connections there. And, but, yeah, good evening. But, wherever you like. If we need more table space, we'll get more table space. But there's a program, and there's a history behind the program that I learned this week too, which is good. But it's called the Guest Minister Program or Invocation Program. The state of Ohio allows pastors from the various districts. I think they do the same thing in the Senate, but in the House, each representative during the course of the session is allowed to schedule pastors from their district to open the House session in prayer. And so every House session opens in prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance in Ohio. And so Bill Romer, who's the representative for here, Richfield and Bath and all that, I think it's the 38th district, but whatever it is, he asked if I'd ever done it, if I'd be interested in doing it. And he's been trying to get me in there, and had a couple opportunities almost last late spring, early summer, but they did not work out. Then I was scheduled for late in September. That one got canceled because the session was canceled. So then they rescheduled for yesterday, and it was good because they actually had some interesting things going on yesterday in the House. One of them is they had a contingent that had two, either some kind of politicians of some sort from India, two from Thailand, and one from Pakistan that were observing the Ohio legislature to see how we do things. So they were actually there, in the session that I got to pray at.
We think they thought about rain again.
Well, and see, that's what had to be interesting. Yeah, because see, India, they got, Hindu and some Christian and some Muslim, and Pakistan's predominantly Muslim, and then Thailand is probably predominantly, what would Pakistan be? Or not Pakistan. Pakistan's Muslim. Thailand is predominantly, I think, Buddhist or something like that. So they did have to find that interesting that we had a prayer, and then immediately it's kind of funny because you're standing on the dais and there's really not a whole lot of room because the Speaker of the House is a big guy. I mean, he's taller and wider than I am, and so he's taken up a good bit of space, and then Bill Romer's up there, and then I have to be up there, and there's a big chair that the speaker gets to sit in when things are going on and he's doesn't need to be standing. And so between the chair and the podium, there's about this much space, and there's less space on the platform than there is on this table. It's you get about this much space because of that table, the chair to stand in, and then over to the side it's about this wide and only about this much, and the steps going down. So the key was immediately after the prayer, you have to turn to the right, and the prayer starts immediately. It's not any kind of, all right, thank you, now let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. It's just like, amen, and then it's everybody starts doing the prayer. So you have to turn, not fall down the steps into the prayer, which is good because, you're right there where the camera is. So if you fall down the steps, it'd be like, I pledge allegiance, going down the steps. So, the challenge was no more than 2 minutes because they keep a tight schedule. And if anybody's ever been to the State House, I think both the House and the Senate, the key for the person that reads the bill or the thing that they're going to consider, the speaker will say, the bill we have is such and such, and then this guy reads they have a summary title. And you ever hear those commercials with the disclaimer on the end where the guy talks? what? That's how this. I think the same people do them. They hire to do the reading because it just it just they waste no
Like a
time at all.
pioneer.
Yeah, and so had the prayer, and then you had to go out and go around the side here and out the back, and then got to sit up in the upper level there. But one of the Richfield councilmen was down there with us. He's a friend of Representative Romer and myself. He goes to Northfield Baptist up here, so Dr. Gary Dominic, he's the chiropractor up there in Centertown. So him and I rode down together. Absolutely gorgeous day going down. We're in that rare time that I think is the first time in the last at least 20 years. There's no construction between here and Columbus. Isn't that amazing?
You can't say that south of Columbus because we got.
There are plenty down there. But when we went down to Kentucky and back last week, on the way down, on the way back, no construction between here and Columbus. When we went down, I went down with Chris Long on Tuesday, no construction down and back. I went down with Dr. Dominic yesterday, no construction on the way down and back. I think it's been 20 years or more since I could say that happened. Hey, so come on in. Yeah, we got cheer. Yeah, it's just I just experience it. I mean, it was great. And also yesterday and Wednesday going into Columbus, the traffic was pretty light going in when we got into the city. It wasn't bad. So talking about going down to Columbus. So should back up a little bit here. On Wednesday, when I was down there with Chris Long, we had a meeting with the Speaker of the House. And so one of the things that happened was we presented him with a framed copy of the 10 Commandments. And this is an ongoing project that the Ohio Christian Alliance has been doing for quite a few years. It's really very nice. Somebody had done this, and it's a nice calligraphy type rendition of the 10 Commandments and beautifully framed. And they've been giving these away to elected officials and different things for quite a number of years. So we went down there to do that. But while we were there, the speaker gave us a pretty good period of time. There was the pastor of First Baptist Church in Medina was there, a guy in the Columbus area who used to pastor, I forget, he goes to Genoa Baptist Church down there, I think now, but he used to be a pastor. He's on the radio down there. And then there was a couple other people. I can't remember exactly. One guy was an attorney, but like I said, there were several pastors, and so we were down there, and he gave us a good bit of time. We probably it felt like about a half an hour, I think, that we had, which really was pretty good. And he talked about a number of things that are happening in the state. And one of the things that he mentioned is a bill that we have been concerned about over in the Senate Bill 11, the Ohio Fairness Act that somebody here said should be the Unfairness Act. It's a SOGI bill or SOGI law. SOGI, S-O-G-I, stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity. The bill basically would do to the whole state what they're doing in Cuyahoga County right now and a few cities around the state. Basically that they want to reinterpret all of the laws where it says no discrimination on the basis of sex or age or national origin, that sort of stuff, to include the transgendered and all these other things. And it also, the other unfortunate thing that it does is it means that if you have a school and the young boy comes to school one day as Joe and he announces, "I'm now Josephine," he has to be allowed to use the ladies' restroom and locker rooms and play in the girls' sports. There's just a case that was just in the news where a guy that decided he's really a girl is breaking records in some, it was a track event or something. And we had a case in Connecticut where there's a couple of girls that had been working in, towards scholarships in track and field and should have made the state team and gotten these scholarships, but two guys that were mediocre at best in men's track and field suddenly decided they were girls, and now they're the top two girls in girls track and field in the state of Connecticut. I mean, it's mind-boggling. This is insanity. Has anybody been following the case in Texas?
Oh,
The 7-year-old little boy, his mom, who's a psychiatrist or psychologist, one of the two,
Pediatrician, you said.
pediatric psychologist or something. But she decided that of the twin boys, that one of them should be a girl. So because in her mind, she should understand this, in her mind, she can't accept the fact she doesn't have a little girl. She started when the little boy was just several months old, I think, something like that, treating him like a little girl. And as he got older,
Talk about child abuse.
yeah, it's
That's
exactly
what
what
it
it is.
is,
She would lock him in his bedroom and say, "You can't come out until you put that dress on," and all this kind of stuff. It caused it caused them to get divorced, and the man was trying to get custody, but she's got custody, and now she is trying to start with puberty blocking therapy.
This is what
7-year-old boy.
last night about this.
Puberty blocking therapy.
Yeah.
This is
Chemical castration.
Well, this is the prior to that. That's the next thing that comes, and then comes, they get the knives out, basically. Now this is insanity,
Amen.
and there was a jury trial in Texas that found in her favor. So it's not bad enough that she's nuts. Well, I guess she went to a jury of her peers.
Yeah,
They were all nuts too.
Yeah.
And the result of this is something that I haven't seen in the news story. Maybe it's there now because I really haven't seen anything today. But there's a movement in Texas and all the way up to the governor's office that they're going to pass a bill banning any kind of sex change, the drugs, operations, anything until they're like 18 or something like that. It's going to raise the age, which will prevent this.
Yeah.
Well, that and the fact that the child will be able to input. And the other thing too is, and Kim and I were talking about this, these puberty blocking drugs, we have no idea what that's going to do to these children when they become adults, because
It's such a new science that the long term, the 20, 30,
the long-term
40
effects, yeah.
year effects of these. I told him, I said, it's just like years ago when women would start going through menopause and start having the side effects, the hot flashes and everything. It was normal that they would give you hormones. Then they found out that women who took hormones were more likely to have heart attacks and stuff like that. So they've really backed off on that now doctors do not give women going through the change hormones, and even when they do, it's usually for just a short period of time. But they didn't find those things out until after they had been giving women these drugs
Years.
for decades. So
Mhm.
so now you got these little kids whose bodies are in the process of changing, or teenagers even, their bodies are changing.
They're arresting the change
And-
process.
Yeah, and then you're giving them all these hormones. You're not gonna know for 2 or 3 decades probably, the long-term effects.
What about the psychological damage?
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
exactly.
but I'm just saying.
But we're just talking about the physical.
Even if you take away
Mhm.
if somebody, takes away, if you take away all of the psychological, which I think is way more.
There's a
No,
significant
they-
amount there because they're more prone to suicide than the average person. People who go through all this stuff, they're prone to suicide. But what I was going to say is there's a movement in Texas now to ban this completely. And the other thing too with all this stuff, we just don't know what it's going to do physically to these kids. In addition to the psychology of it, you're destroying children. But think about this: what does the devil want to do? Destroy.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, the Bible says several times, Genesis 2:27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And then
Amen.
it says it again in Genesis chapter 5, in verse number 2, male and female created he them and blessed them and called their name Adam the day when they were created. So male and female, there's other passages that talk about this too, but you know, there's even and just focusing on a man transitioning into a woman. We think about this craziness with these people in sport, you know, various athletes. There's regulations now that even the Olympics is considering. If a man who's transitioning into a woman is going to play in the women's sports, they have to have a testosterone level in their bloodstream lowered to a certain point for a certain period of time, and that point is still what was it, about 100 times what the average woman has?
Yeah, because it goes from, because normally there's like 1,000% difference, I think.
Yeah,
it
for a
is.
man to a woman, on average,
The test-
we're talking about 1,000%
Yeah.
higher testosterone level.
I can see him race it to the bottom, just forming a third species.
But no, you
For-
can't do
for-
that.
for-
No,
Mhm.
no, because.
That would make too much sense.
But actually, and that's not what they want. That is the very antithesis of what they want. Because what they want is they want to be just like the same-sex marriage, where that they want to be accepted the same as regular marriage. They want to be as perverted as possible, but they want to be accepted as normal. So by saying, "Oh, we'll make you a separate class," just like people, you know, they've had in some of these schools where that these boys saying they want to be girls and all that, and giving them access to locker rooms, and the girl said, "Hey, I don't want this boy in here
Shower.
in the shower with me,"
Right.
you know, and they, you know, said, "Okay, well, little boy who wants to be a girl, we'll have a separate place for you to go and take a shower." Oh no,
It's not good,
that's not good enough.
Right.
Because they don't want separate. They want to be accepted as normal. Yeah, they want to be told that they're normal, which they're not.
Yeah. We were talking about this and the idea they want to change the thinking of people. And, you know, 1984, remember? Truth is lie and lie is truth. But here's a thing here. This is a quote from 1984. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. His heart sank as he thought of the enormous power arrayed against him, the ease with which any party intellectual would overthrow him in debate, the subtle arguments which he would not be able to understand, much less answer. And yet he was right. They were wrong. He was right. So he starts with the main character. He knows he's right because he can see it. He understands it. You know, it's right. But they're telling him what he's seeing and believing is wrong, and that's where that idea where the lie becomes, you know, the truth. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And by eventually causing people to not be able to think correctly, you can then tell them what to think because they don't know what to think.
You empty their head.
Yeah, you so confused and muddled everything. In a sense, it's the psychological version of the communist principle of overwhelming the society so that it goes up in chaos, and out of the chaos you can abolish the old order and bring in the new order and establish, you know, your goals. Cloward and Piven, two people who came up with that concept, overwhelm the system, and then when it collapses, rebuild it in your own image.
Also, if you can get people to believe absurdities, you can get them to commit atrocities.
That's a very good point too. Very good. And look at Nazi Germany. That's what they did there. And
Using people.
yeah, they got them to believe absurdities, and they end up committing atrocities. What they call, you know, to use the big terms, what they call the Hegelian dialectic. you have a thesis. Men are men and women are women. There's men and there's women. And then there's a synthesis. No, gender fluidity. Whether you're a man or woman is just purely yeah.
Imagination.
So these are an obvious contradiction to each other, right? They can't both be true. So they collide. And then somebody comes up with the idea, well, let's say that there's men and there's women, and then there's some people who are in this group that they can be either men or women. And so we're not going to say there's half men and half women and half women and half men, or some, there's men, biological men and biological women. And then there's women, there's men and women who are that way because, they're in the wrong body or something. Yeah, we can agree and compromise on this. That's the synthesis. But usually it provides some kind of collapse, because everything becomes so chaotic and ridiculous, because that's what we're seeing right now, the clash between these. When you see these athletes running and breaking records, and the women being left behind, and they're trying to destroy the system of thought, so that then it leads up to what Neil said. They're trying to get you to believe absurdities so that you'll commit atrocities. And
What is that verse with the Antichrist? Because bringing up to the Antichrist system, changing the laws.
change the laws at times,
Times and laws.
and then people will believe a lie.
Right.
But the whole thing is, just like in 1984, here's one line I looked at right here. In the time of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. But when you got people so confused that you think, okay, I got it today, and then tomorrow it changes. Exactly. And so as a result, people don't know what to do or say. And so they let somebody else do all the decision making for them. And that's what they want. That's what brings in a totalitarian society. That was the principle in 1984. Well, you think this, but that's not right. And then they went back and started, what did they do in 1984? We get rid of all the images of the past. We change the books and the writings of the past. We change all the history of the past. What are they doing?
The same thing.
They're doing exactly that today. It's like I just saw something, and I haven't found it again, but one of the first drafts of the Declaration of Independence, where it lists the charges against King George, one of the charges that was listed against him is that he will not let the colonies abolish the evil practice of selling men in the marketplace. And yet America invented slavery. That was eliminated from the Declaration of Independence, because the southern states that were kind of dependent on it, they needed their support. So there was a compromise that was made with the idea that we'll get rid of it, but we're going to compromise and take that particular charge out right now so that we can get the support of the colonies of Georgia and South Carolina. Exactly. And so you can see how that's been eradicated from our history, and you don't know that. And so as a result, they can bring in whatever they want to bring in. It's the same thing. The reason why does the devil want people to alter what the Bible says? Did it really say that? Exactly. Yeah, you start doubting, and then somebody can come in and say, well, Bob, I'm sorry, you're a great mechanic. You can diagnose what's wrong with the car just by listening to it. But you haven't studied like I have to be able to rightly discern this. So leave it up to me. You just leave it up to me. I'll tell you what to think. In other words, don't you think, we'll do it for you. And that's what happens on all these levels.
Well, yes, it's God is not the author of confusion.
Yeah, exactly. And so if it leads to confusion, then quite likely it's not of God.
Well, you know who it is, though.
Exactly. He's the author. Yeah, the devil is the author of confusion. And so getting back to sitting with the Speaker of the House on Wednesday, the guy, or not you, these guys down here, Pastor Lutz's friend, what's her name, Nikki something or other. She's a senator now. Yeah. When she was a representative, she introduced this just about every term, and now she's got it over in the Senate. It's Senate Bill 11, the Ohio Fairness Act, which really should be called the Ohio Unfairness Act, and that's what prompted our discussion here. But what they have done is the new representative from Lakewood, and I had his name here. Give me just a moment. The new representative from Lakewood is Michael Skindell. Well, Michael Skindell, in addition to being a liberal Democrat, decided that, we should introduce a companion bill to Senate Bill 11 in the House. So we can pass a companion bill with the same language as the Senate bill, basically, in the House. And if the Senate bill gets passed in the Senate, and we'll bring them together, and it'll be that much faster, and it'll go through faster. So somebody thought, you need somebody to co-sign on this bill from the Republican Party. Well, enter this young freshman Republican by the name of Brett Hillier from, he represents basically Holmes and Tuscarawas County. Now, Holmes and Tuscarawas County might be known for a lot of things, but when people think of Holmes and Tuscarawas County, you think of the most left-leaning counties in the states, don't you? No. The Amish country and all that. This guy ran as, let me see if I can find the article that was in the Ohio Star. But no, the Amish do. The Amish do. When it's an issue that they're concerned about. Remember back some years ago when they had that issue about the banning mourning dove hunting? The Amish showed up in droves because they don't go out and shoot mourning doves just for sport. They go out and shoot them for food. And the Amish, that was a big issue to them. And when that was on the ballot, he said, when you drove through where the Amish live, every polling station was packed with buggies. See, when there's an issue that they're interested in, they show up in droves. See, it's a misconception that the Amish don't vote. It's just they don't, unless it's something that concerns them.
Can you be disenfranchised if you don't vote every time?
No, not every time. But if you don't vote for a period of time, they'll drop you from the rolls. That's a battle that they go through. The Democrats don't want that to happen because they want to get people that have not voted in the last 10 years to come out for things and vote.
For 10 years.
Yeah, that too. But the idea, I think it is, if you've not voted in 6 consecutive elections, now 6 consecutive elections would mean I don't think it means the off, like say you get one in August or something like that. I don't think it counts those. It counts the primary and the general election, not the special ones. So every year there's a primary in the spring and a general in the fall. So that basically means 3 years. But that's 6 opportunities to vote. And I may be wrong on the 6 elections, but that's what number comes to my mind right now. But there is a number. And in the idea with Ohio right now, Ohio has one of the most generous terms of early voting. You can go vote right now. The November election has been going on for about a week now, I think. It's hard to believe the vote is already taking place. In Ohio, it used to be you almost had to get a doctor's order to get a absentee ballot. Now, you get a postcard in the mail from the Secretary of State's office saying, would you like an absentee ballot? You get all these. It's so easy to vote absentee. There's no reason for Ohio to have this, month of voting going on. Absentee ballots are so easy to get and they're so convenient. You just comes in the mail in the leisure of your own time in your own home. You fill it out and then you stick it in the envelope, and I think it's even postage paid. Then off it goes.
No.
Is it not postage paid? Okay, I couldn't remember. I usually vote in the thing, unless it's a presidential election. Then I do the absentee because I work in the polls.
Well, I'm starting to work on this one.
Yeah, do you know where you're going to work yet?
Yeah, the library.
Okay, the township. No,
They
good.
made me absentee ballot.
Yeah, they encourage it, and it's a good thing, especially if it's a big election. Yeah, but the smaller elections, something you have plenty of time. So, but it's good. It's good to do because then you don't have to worry about it when you're there.
Good practice
So-
for next year.
So the moral of the story is
But-
no excuse for somebody not. to vote.
Yeah, so it's very easy to vote in Ohio. Ohio is an extremely easy state to vote in. And on the absentee ballot, what is it? You record, I think, the last four of your social security number or your driver's license number or something like that. That's all you have to do.
You have 3 boxes there. First one was driver's license, second one was social security, last 4 numbers. And then there was another one, and I kind of disregarded it.
Yeah, and you do one of the 3, isn't it?
Yeah, you only have to do one.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy to do. And then you just send it off and you're voted. But so basically it's a cutoff that if people aren't going to vote, then you don't know where they're at now after several years. People move. You don't even know if they're in the state or if they're alive or what. So they figure if somebody's in the state and they're interested, they'll be voting. And if they move, then you'll find out that they moved. But if nobody's seen them for years, then they drop them from the rolls. That's why they always push the voter registration. The biggest, does anybody know what the biggest voting block? I know you know this one. The biggest voting block in the country is. They talked about this Tuesday night, I think, if you remember this.
Senior.
No, the biggest voting block in the country
Oh,
is
evangelical.
Christians. You know what the biggest group in the country that doesn't vote is?
Christians.
Christians. Is it any wonder that they don't listen to us?
Well,
We don't vote.
Take advantage of.
We just don't vote. You know how President Trump got in? A larger than normal group of Christians voted.
vote against
Yeah.
that.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of pastors out there, and I hate to say it, there's some independent, fundamental Baptist pastors out there who aren't going to vote for President Trump unless they change their mind between now and then. And I'm not even talking about the other denomination, I'm just talking about us. And there's, I mean, it's so, you know, I mean, so anyway, getting back to the voting thing and what the Speaker of the House was saying, Christians basically put this guy, what was his name again, Hanley or Hillier, this Brett Hillier in office. He courted their vote without notifying anybody, without even talking, because I guess the procedure, the protocol is, especially for freshmen, if you're thinking of co-sponsoring a bill that's sponsored by Democrats in particular, you talk to the guy. If you're a Democrat, you talk, because they're in the minority party. If you're in the minority party, you talk to the minority party whip or whatever guy that's the leader of the minority party, and then you talk to your majority party leader, who happens to, in this case, to be the Speaker of the House. And plus, I guess the Speaker of the House had helped him get elected. And then he turns around and he signs on as a co-sponsor. Now, apparently the people in his district are livid. And a lot of people believe he's going to be primaried this coming spring. In the primaries, he's going to be bounced out of there. So he's likely going to be a one-term representative. But somehow somebody on the Democrat side, along with this Skindell guy, got to him and promised him something, whatever they said to him. But this is what the speaker was telling us when we were there giving him that copy of the 10 Commandments, is that this was all done behind his back. And he said he just couldn't believe that this guy did this. And he's tried to talk with them. and the guy's still a co-sponsor of it. So he's suggesting that what needs to happen is people around the state need to contact, in particular, the Republicans on the Civil Justice Committee of the House and urge them to not support this bill, and contact Hillier here and try to get him to rescind his co-sponsorship. Because, yeah, because see, this is a dangerous thing, because the other thing, remember how they targeted the city of Medina because the Senate, what's he called again? I want to say Senate Majority Leader, but he's the equivalent of the Speaker of the House. But at any rate, he's the guy that runs the Senate. And Larry Oboff, I can't think of his title now, but he's a senator. His hometown is Medina. That's one of the reasons Medina was targeted. Guess who the head of this committee is? The head of this committee is Representative Stephen Hambly, who's from Medina County. So pressure is going to be on him too, and now he's got one of his own. Chris and I, coming up from Columbus on Tuesday, we're talking about this. There's 6 Democrats on the committee, and it looks like all 6 of them will vote to pass it. There's 9 Republicans on the committee, and at least 4 of them look like they either will vote for it or might vote for it. How many does that leave to vote against it that are fairly confident might vote against it? 5 out of what is it, a 15-member committee? How do we defeat these things when our own people are, as Margaret Thatcher said, going wobbly on us? So we need to pray for these people. That's one thing. I mean, this is why Paul said to pray for those that are in authority, that we can live a peaceable life. So we need to pray for them. And then Christians need to contact these people and urge them, because they don't hear from us. We're the largest voting bloc, and we're the largest bloc that doesn't vote.
Obama's president.
President, yeah, Senate president. That's right. I got majority leader or something in mind. So yeah, he's the president of the Senate. So now you've got pressure in the Senate through what's going on there with Senate Bill 11. This one's not received a number yet in the House, and you've got pressure there, and you're going to have some Republicans who are wobbly say, well, look, this guy over here, he ran as a conservative Christian platform, and he's a co-sponsor of it. Surely I can sponsor it. It'll be safe. And there's people who are going to think that, unless people like us pray and contact these people. So this is, and the speaker was emphasizing it needs to be done yesterday, basically. So it's to keep it from gaining any more traction, because this business with this guy, this Republican or freshman signing on to it is just, this blindsided everybody. Nobody saw it coming, which means that somewhere behind the scenes the Democrats were working on it, and these extremist groups were working on it. No, he ran with the help of Christians and who helped encourage him to run. The Speaker of the House is a Christian and conservative, and he helped them, encourage them. They thought he was a good guy. That's why everybody's saying. I mean, and he's a young guy. He really would have had to have been a good actor covering his past, because he's a young guy, and he's a freshman representative, and that's what's shocking them so much. He didn't come out of nowhere. They thought he was a solid conservative. Now, it wouldn't be the first time, though, that somebody has played that role, because a few years ago, before the last presidential election, there was a guy who, and I'm trying to remember enough of the story to keep it straight. Actually, no pun intended with that. because he was in some things involved leading up to the election, and he basically was caught taking advantage of a young male volunteer in his hotel room at some event that they were at. And it turned out that he was a closet homosexual that had run on a conservative Christian platform, pro-life, pro-family, against all these SOGI laws and stuff like that. So I'm not saying you're wrong in that assessment, because it did happen with this one guy.
Well, it just
And-
seems like they're infiltrating
Mhm.
the grassroots level.
Exactly. So, and that's where we have to be careful. But everybody was sure this guy was a good guy, and then he does this, and nobody can figure out why.
One term, he's done what he was putting there.
Exactly. Because see that,
Promised him a job when he got bounced out.
well, that may be too.
And furthermore, they might, hopefully they'll replace him with a real Republican.
Well, yeah, because like I said, his district is livid. I guess the pastors in that district are just beside themselves because they supported him. I guess they endorsed him, and they knew him, and that's why I said it blindsided everybody. It's just this is what's going on. This is why we need to pray for those places, and this is why it's good that we do have the prayer thing at the house. And I was going to go back to that. The thing with the house prayer is it has been a fixture since Ohio has been a state, with the exception of a short period of time. The current Lieutenant Governor, John Husted, one time some years ago was the Speaker of the House. And there was a surge of lawsuits being filed against government entities. The current Secretary of State, I believe it is, Yost, at the time was the Franklin County prosecutor, and John Husted was the Speaker of the House. Franklin County was threatened because they had something where they had prayer, I think, before starting their sessions. And then in the House, a guy came up and he did his prayer, and he addressed some legislation that was being voted on. I think it might have been at the time that Ohio was considering the DOMA Act. Remember the Defense of Marriage that the Supreme Court did away with by saying it was unconstitutional. And
That's probably a no-no.
yeah, well, it was in that. I think it was in that way back in that time frame or somewhere in there when the Defense of Marriage Act was being argued and all. But this guy
The
argued.
government refused to defend him. That's
Yeah.
why it went down.
Yeah. And so, but what happened was this pastor prayed, and he basically something along the lines of, and we pray that this bill passes and these legislators vote for it, or something like that, or defeat whatever it was. But it was very sectarian in a sense. He from his prayer called on what he wanted them to do.
He was lobbying from.
The pulpit, yeah.
Yeah.
He had a lobby prayer, and you're not supposed to do that in that setting, which is understandable. So 2 Democrat members rushed to the platform at the end of the prayer, and there's a clerk or something, and they filed formal complaints. Exactly, and Houston, because of what was going on, temporarily suspended it. Now, this is one of the things that we have to be thankful to Christians who are willing to stand up and do something. Houston contacted Chris Long, who at the time was, he still is head of the Ohio Christian Alliance, and Houston knew him and valued his opinion, and he said, this is what's happening. We don't want to be sued. We're thinking about hiring a chaplain, a house chaplain. And Chris told, he said, I told him, he said, basically, because the idea, if they hire him, they're paying his salary, they can tell him what he can't, tell him what to do. But he said, and I think this was wise, he said, No, the guest minister program has served Ohio well. And what it does is it allows ministers from all the different denominations in Ohio to come down to the people's house. And it allows the representatives to have somebody from their district coming down representing their district. And it brings the people into the house. And, we talked about that. And so Houston said, okay, we won't hire a chaplain, reinstate the guest minister program, and it's been there ever since.
But they ask you in advance what they're gonna say.
Well,
So-
yes and no. What it is the requirements that I was given, you're asked to pray a blessing, to bless the session. I mean, and it makes sense. I wasn't asked down there to do a 2-minute sermon or a 2-minute evangelistic crusade or a 2-minute, fleece, ripping the skin off the hide off from everybody's back, or whatever, or tell them what to say or do. I was asked there to ask a blessing on them, and so that's what I endeavored to do and remind them that they're ministers of God, and the Bible has some requirements to defend the innocent and all of that, and ask for wisdom to do that. But anyway, so the requirements is no more than 2 minutes, because they have a time schedule. They don't want a 20-minute prayer. And they want it written out because they include it. They have a book that contains all of the prayers that are given in the session that they put together for the session. So the main reason that they want it in advance, the open outward reason, is to put it in the book. But I'm sure the subtle reason was, if I said something in there, and Lord, I pray that you smite these renegade Republicans to the wall and put the fear of God into these Democrats, I think I might have got a call saying, Pastor Davis, you might want to reword that. Because that's a subtle way of enabling them to be able to review before they get it, without saying, we're going to review what you're saying. So you work within the parameters. And I had the one aide afterwards tell me, he said that it was the best prayer that he's heard all session. And I had one representative, as I was going down the stairs this way, he was coming down the stairs up above me, the flight above, and he saw me and he called out to me and thanked me and said he really appreciated the prayer. And Dr. Dominic, who was there, I did not catch it myself because I was kind of focused on what I was doing and remembering that as soon as I said amen, I had to turn around and start into the pledge and not fall down the steps. So, but he said there was a number of amens throughout the representatives, I guess even on the Democrat side. So they appreciate it. But
not like it, you'd have to be a child of the devil.
well, I'm not saying there weren't any there, but so I had these, the Indians and the Thai and the Pakistani guys up there, and then because they were reviewing this legislation that affects military veterans and retirees and their spouses, there were some people in there for that, and then I was introduced as an Air Force veteran, so that was perfect timing on that. And then there was some urban rescue group in there. They even had their, they were wearing their coats and their boots and had their search dogs with them and everything. It's kind of neat. And they were in there because there was something dealing with that. And so they had a whole group of them in there. So it was a good sized group. But I do have it on here on the computer and I'm going to read, or you can go online and listen to it. But it was a great opportunity. But it's good that we have that there today because Christians held the line. And that's what Christians can do when they get involved. And, looking at President Trump there, because we got involved and we voted. So this business with these SOGI laws, if we don't do anything, we outnumber these people.
Every time we let something like the prayer slide and it disappears, it's giving ground to the devil.
Mm-hmm. It's harder. Oh, what's that?
They're bound and determined to make us pay
Mhm.
for that.
Oh yeah, That's why we see our problem is we get a victory and we go back to church. And all right, now let's learn about Noah here or something. Yeah, not even Noah, because Noah, if you look at that, oh, he stood in the face of evil. Let's learn about whatever. But I mean, we ignore everything out there again.
It's important to
And-
regularly, whether we think it's important or not.
Exactly. And so it's one of the reasons that we talk about current events in light of the Bible, in addition to actual, questions about passages in the Bible, because it's important to develop that view where you start seeing these things in the world. Because if this guy, Hillier, is truly a born again Christian, where's his pastor on this? I mean, what happened when he went to church the next Sunday after coming out endorsing this bill?
Ignorant.
Well, I wish I could say, oh no, but I have to say, you're probably right. His pastor and the church are probably ignorant. They're probably thinking, oh, Fairness Act, that sounds good. Well, that's
better
great
than
of you.
Being complicit.
Yeah,
What about,
well,
like, the
that may be
apostate
too.
church? Apostate
Yeah,
church.
because I don't know what kind of church he goes to,
Yeah.
but I mean, for instance, if it was United Church of Christ, they probably would, yeah, great job, great job.
Complicit.
But he would not have been portrayed as a conservative Christian if he went to the United Church of Christ, because that's the most leftist denomination out there. So
United Church of the Antichrist.
yeah, when you read the proponent testimony on Senate Bill 11, the United Church of Christ is there. They're all over it. United Methodist is another one that's all over it. And
Did the Satanists show up?
Well,
yeah, but they don't always tell you who they are, but they're there.
Not here, the witches are gonna do a prayer against.
Oh yeah, there are a bunch of witches around the country band together to bring curses on President Trump. They've done this several times. But see, this is another thing that's important. We need to pray for his protection, because we understand they think they have these special powers, but unless they're just
The devil has power.
yeah, the devil's one has power. Some of them understand what really is going on, that their power is only what the devil allows to work through them. But some of them really do have themselves convinced that they have these powers. Complete aside, when I was younger, I used to love playing Monopoly. And I went with some friends of mine to play Monopoly at somebody's house in Akron. This is probably about 1981 or something like that. And I actually had a pretty good track record of winning. And this girl that was there, she said that she had powers to be able to influence how the dice rolled and how people would play the game. And she said she's going to win because she's going to, will it. She's basically practicing witchcraft without coming out and saying it. And I said, no, I think I'm going to win. You're going to lose. And I mean, sometimes, when you win at Monopoly, you just barely win, but sometimes you ground your opponents into the dirt and make them suffer. Well, I'm not saying I just barely won, but but it shocked her that she was not able to do this. Now, at the time, I wasn't thinking she's a witch and I'm a Christian and I'm going to show the difference between Christ and the powers of darkness. But the fact of the matter was, she honestly thought she had these abilities. She was one of those people who the devil had fooled to where she honestly thought she could do this with her own unique powers.
She had too much success in the past.
Oh yeah, but what I'm getting at is some of them know it's the devil working through them or some power working through them, but she thought it was her power. And the devil doesn't mind that. In fact, he loves it when they think that, because then he sets them up for a fall because they think they can do all these things and they have these powers, which they don't. And see, that's the problem Christians have when we think we do all this stuff in our own strength and our own power, and we forget that we can only do this with Christ working through us. See, and so that's what I said. And on the dark side, they have sometimes the same problems. that we have on the light side. We forget that it's God working through us, and we get overconfident. And that's why the Bible tries to constantly remind us that I can do all things not through me, but through Christ. That's the one that strengthens us.
Also, it's what Paul says, give him thorn in the flesh.
Yeah, to keep him humble,
Yeah.
remind him to be dependent on God.
Right.
But see, the devil loves to get people thinking that they can do it. And he gets control of them that way. And so this poor girl, she was convinced that she had this power. And I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess it shocked her. And she was kind of depressed after that because she just couldn't understand. And I wasn't like invoking the name of God. I plead the blood, Lord Jesus Christ. I command foul spirits of monopoly cheating to go away or something nothing like that. It's just that, I just knew that what she was saying was a bunch of nonsense.
Well, is this true? Whatever good in this world is good, and whatever bad is real bad. So, with our eyes, things that we don't see or anything like that, I mean, there could be some really bad things out there. Really.
Oh yeah, we don't always
And
see what's
what-
going on.
There could be really good things, but what I noticed as I grew up, and I experienced, these people who have powers, they feed off of other people's powers.
Mm-hmm.
They feed off of other people's powers. They find a person that's weak
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, that could be handicapped or whatever, and their mind control over them type of
Mm-hmm.
people. But anybody that's in power, they try to feed off other people's powers.
That's what the left specializes in doing. That's what communism is and socialism is predicated on. Being able to take the power from everybody else so that you have it. And the devil's more than happy to lead people down that path.
Yeah, but and that problem is and the problem with a situation like that would be like you allow it. I mean, if you come across somebody who's a witch or something like that, and that witch is trying to have power over you or anything, or something like that, you would have to allow it.
Well, and that's why the Bible said God said in Hosea, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. We don't know. And somebody said it earlier about this guy's church. Maybe they're just ignorant or unaware. And unfortunately, that is often the case. I run into numbers of pastors that this kind of stuff we're talking about right here, they wouldn't bother with that. It's a waste of time.
No, they blow it off immediately.
Yeah, it's just a waste of time. It's not that important. Let's talk about something important. And they'll, I mean, I will readily admit that evangelism is not my strong suit. There's spiritual gifts. I do not have the gift of evangelism. It's not required to be a pastor, but a pastor is required to do the work of an evangelist. Just like I've used the story before about my brother-in-law, that when he was a police officer at North Royalton, he was on patrol early one morning, saw smoke coming out of the house. He raided in, ran up there, pounded on the doors, woke everybody up, got everybody out before the fire department got there, probably saved their lives, and he got a commendation from the mayor. Now, he could have easily said, well, that's the fireman's job. It's not my job. I'm a police officer. It's not my job to get these people out of a burning house. And drove on. I radioed it in. I'll just drive on. Let the firemen take care of it. That's their job. But he went as a police officer. He did the work of a fireman. And see, that's when you look at evangelism, sometimes people that recognize that they do not have the gift of evangelism will say, well, then it's not my job. I'll let the person that has the gift of evangelism take care of it. No, we're to do the work of an evangelist when we have opportunity. May not be our gift, but we're still required to do that work. Just like my brother-in-law, it would have been morally wrong for him to drive on and not try to help those people, because he was the only person there who could help those people at that time. And it may be you're the only person there that can help that person with understanding the gospel. And you can't say, well, I'm not gifted in evangelism.
Yeah, because I experienced this stuff when I grew up,
Yeah.
and I was born again Christian, and I was totally against it, but I seen it with my own eyes. I seen things happen.
Mm-hmm.
I seen, like, my one friend, and I don't know if he still lives there, he said white witchcraft.
Yeah, and that's where they fool themselves.
Yeah, I don't believe all that.
No, there's no
I
such
mean,
thing as white witchcraft. They think
know,
they're doing good,
They
but
think they're doing good, right? You know, and then I experienced, like her name is Madam Coco, which is New Orleans. She used to come up here in Cleveland from New Orleans. Now New Orleans, there are witches and there are.
oh, they're here too.
Mixed breed of us up in there. But she used to come up this way. I seen to have altar and all that and all this. And I used to experience this one gentleman. His name was Wally. He was one of the oldest warlocks. And I experienced that he had a witches club, Witches Cave up on Lorraine Road in Cleveland area. And you know, and which Wally was my friend, but doesn't mean that I believe they used to hold things downtown and have a circle where you could become a witch. You bring in a circle, do all this type of stuff and all this, and then they have all this motions, and they have all that stuff put up on the altar and do all these type things. That's why I'm saying what is evil can be real evil, and there can be, if you involve yourself in that, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble.
But in the early stages, there's a lot of deception. The devil doesn't want people to see the evil at first, and there's a lot of deception because this stuff is all over. It's very prevalent, and it doesn't just stick within those little things like that. It's just little things like it reaches out the astrology columns in the papers, which most of them are, well, let me stick with the astrology for a minute. The astrology columns in the paper, most of them are just utter nonsense. They're what's called Barnum statements, that are statements that are written so vague that anybody that wants it to apply to them can make it apply to them.
Right.
And there's a technical psychological term, but Barnum statements are the best term really to remember, because remember Barnum, his thing, there's a sucker born every minute. They're designed to fool people. A guy did a psychological study, where he said at the end of the course, he said, now I've watched everybody all year, and I've written out a particular assessment or something of each of you. It's unique for each one of you. And he handed it out, like folded up or whatever. He says, now don't show it to anybody else. I want everybody to read this and then tell me whether or not you agree with it. And everybody's going like, wow, this is amazing. You really nailed it. This is me. And then he said, now show it like to the person next to you. Everybody had the exact same statement in the class. Every single person's was the exact same thing. But it was written in such a way, it would be like saying, I remember giving an example of it to somebody one time who was a young lady who was just getting ready to graduate from school and considering going on to dental school, to graduate from the medical school or go on to dental school. And I said, I could easily phrase it this way, you're excited about the prospects of the future, yet you've got some concern and some fear. What if it doesn't work out? And what if I was to meet some young man and want to get married and have a family instead of going to medical school? But then I would be worried that I might have had a nice career. And it was just vague statements like either this or that, to where you're covering all of the bases. When you go into the room, the light is going to be on, but if it's not on, it'll be off. And the heat will either be turned up, or if it's not turned up, it might be turned down, or it might be off at all. And they walk in the room and they go, wow, he was right. The light is off and the heat is off. And he said that. They forget that I also said it could be on, or it could be the heat could be on and it might be turned up or down. Or people remember what they want to remember, and they make it fit what they want to make fit. And that's how these groups lure people in. They get stuff and people go, wow. And they don't think of the bad stuff. They think of these exciting things, and they get sucked into it. But I don't know, getting away from where we were talking about some of this other stuff too, though. But the idea is we do need to pray for these people, because they're, this guy that co-sponsored this. I mean, it's not without the realm.
Keep them in darkness the way you possibly can. If there's a warlock or a witch, that witch wants that person to be in darkness. You don't want that person seeing no light whatsoever.
Well, that's why God said, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge," and we're not to be unwise. The Bible talks a lot about wisdom. I'm going through Proverbs on Sunday nights right now, and it's just constant thing about wisdom, and knowledge, and understanding, insight, wisdom, knowledge, and it's all over and over and over. And of course, the beginning of wisdom and the beginning of knowledge both is what? The fear of the Lord, having a respect for who God is, and all. But whether this guy that's co-sponsoring this was a plant, which is not out of the realm of possibility, or whether he's just some guy that just got through ignorance, young and naive, through ignorance, he got sold a bill of goods and deceived and sucked in. Whatever the case is, that's why we need to pray for these people. And it's a constant barrage. The devil never rests, and his forces never take a vacation. The left never stops. It's constant. They get setbacks. It doesn't bother them. They just regroup and keep going. And
They never defect.
Huh?
They never defect.
Yeah. Whereas the people on the right, what do? We give up, we roll over, and we compromise. So here's the compromise. Here's the right, here's the left. So the left is over here and the right's over here. And the left says, we want you on the right to be over here. And the right says, no, we need to be over here. And so the left says, well, let's compromise. We'll meet you halfway. And so the right says, well, halfway is better than way over here. So we move over here. Then the left says, we want you to be over here. And we say, no, we're going to stay right here. And they say, well, we'll compromise halfway. And then we meet them halfway. Before you know it, we're right over here where they were in the first place. And that's what we do. We just roll over. So, there's some things showing that some people may be having enough of it. That's one of the things I think that brought Trump to power, that got some Christians out doing things. Delve into all the political things. But yeah,
It's time for a reset.
we need to, it's like having your ratchet where you could flip the little thing, so now it goes back the other way, hopefully. But yeah, it's an unfortunate thing is we just keep going that one direction. And
When the conservatives are at great risk, we'll respond and defend ourselves. But then when the risk is over, we're not interested in forcing everyone to be like us. We're just interested in raising a family and living our lives peacefully.
Mhm.
They're always interested in forcing everyone else to be like that.
Well, here's the other thing, is that we have jobs,
Yeah.
families, churches.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is their job.
Wow.
Yeah.
When they went before the thing in Cleveland, when Trump was.
The
before they
convention
had
center.
the convention, one of these liberal, was Indivisible, wasn't it?
I think
Which is
so.
one of these big protest groups.
Related to Antifa,
Yeah,
things like
they're
that.
related to Antifa. They had advertisements on Craigslist to pay people to go to Cleveland and protest during the convention.
I was at a computer meeting last night for this digital people at this gun club. And they're all secular and they're smart, they're educated. So I got sent there for my job, and they said that Google announced on Wednesday that they can run on the computer. And we were saying that, and this is all kind of stuff that I've seen for a couple of years now, that they're working on. I contend the Chinese already had it, and that's how they're implementing the data system in real time. And they were going on and on about how this computer can now solve problems that would take most modern computers today 10,000 years. They were saying you can solve them in 2 minutes. And so, in other words, they were saying get ready for some these great things, get ready for a lot of things. And I don't even know if they knew what they were saying so much, but they kind of did. because they didn't like computer people. But they were basically saying automated intelligence is about to take over everything. And you're going to have other choices you can do. If they want to, they can do that. They can basically program anything they want to with food with this technology. Whether this is the case or not, it's well, you and I know, but this was coming from these marketing sector people that are so excited about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the left hand, they keep saying, well, it's going to be very dangerous. Admitting that it could be dangerous.
Part of the problem is that they think that human intelligence and thought is purely mechanical. And we're not purely mechanical.
We're a quantum computer.
Yes,
That's right.
and if we really were purely mechanical, then yeah, you could upload and we could live on in the cloud, so to speak. But with our soul that God's given us, and with the free will that God's given us, we're not purely mechanical.
Right.
And so the things that they think they can accomplish, they can't now. That's not to say that the quantum computer can't solve certain problems that are beyond present computers. But those problems don't reach the point of being able to control people.
Well, in a marketing sense,
Mm-hmm.
And that's, they all
I was gonna-
this way, that's
They do not. Yeah, they do not control us like you ever seen science fiction shows or something where everybody's linked into the computer and the computer periodically reboots and they'll go, and then they'll think something completely different. But what they do, and Google did this during the last election, they put out targeted ads that affected the vote in a certain level. Quantum computing would enable them to do that in a far greater level. They can affect our behavior psychologically. Yeah, some people. Unfortunately, the majority of people are more likely to be maneuvered because the less you know and the less you're aware of, the more susceptible you can be to these subtle things that they're doing.
It kind of goes to that beast system that you mentioned earlier, where, the younger generations, like my kids, are so dumbed down in a lot of ways.
You don't know, and you don't know how to think.
They don't even know.
Mhm.
Is their whole entire life.
Mhm.
And,
But psychological manipulation is so great because look at supermarkets. The most valuable real estate is supermarkets, the end cap. Because if you can get a product on the end cap, you'll sell more, even if it's a junk product. Because everybody sees it, and if it's on the end cap, they think it's more important or it's a special deal. Doesn't have to be, but it's on the end cap.
They were showing examples and explaining how they already have bot technology now that basically, as soon as you enter into engaging with an advertisement, the bot will automatically have a conversation with you and get you to purchase.
Yesterday, this is real-time example. Yesterday, I was talking with Representative Romer's legislative aide. I have to give you his name. His name is he's a Kent State student studying political science. He got involved in the political science club at Kent State. They were sure he was going to be a liberal Democrat because his name is River Kale. I'd like to have that name, River Kale, Kale, like the vegetable. River Kale, it's his actual name. Kale was something that was shortened, probably Ellis Island or something like that. But anyway, really nice guy, sharp young man. And he would like to go into politics. And so, but we were talking, sitting next to each other in the gallery during the session yesterday. And he had said something to Dr. Dominic, who was sitting on the other side of him, about me, and then mentioned my name, and then said something to me, and mentioning Representative Romer, and it popped up on his Facebook page, a suggested friend with my name. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you think these phones listen to us?
Oh, yeah.
Because your name just popped up here as a suggested friend."
And now they're showing, because this was in the context of marketing, And so, yeah, this bot stuff is incredible. And then the augmented reality is going to come into play now. And they were saying like that whole phenomenon that Pokemon Go is just child's play compared to what virtual reality that people are going to be purposely chipping themselves and putting on their own.
Oh, yeah.
I was saying it's been vying to how the anti-car system compared to the online president.
Mhm.
Who's gonna use the technology?
Right.
Yeah.
Who's the match? I mean,
Let me back up to Pokemon Go. Does everybody know what Pokemon Go is? Some of you might not know what that is. What it is you take your cell phone and with the camera function, if I remember correctly, with this thing, it uses your camera and you go around and you're seeing the landscape. Like I'm looking at these two guys back there, and if there was one of these Pokemon characters, it would be appearing standing between them when I look at this. I would see them with this character in between them, and then I click on it to capture it.
Right.
But what it gets you used to is looking at the world through this and believing what you see here more than what you see here. Remember the old expression, who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes or, you know,
And that's kind of
This
what
cartoon
the
character
game is
between-
talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
So what's that mean?
You got tokens and.
You get points for capturing them.
It was a
So
game.
kids would, you ever see these kids going through the mall maybe in the past? It's kind of faded in popularity, but there for a while. You see them going down around. One thing, it got a lot of kids out doing things, but they will walk around like this with their phone because somebody would, through software, hide a Pokemon character in a location, like right there.
It's just a simple GPS.
Yeah, it uses the GPS function and the camera. So when they're going along with this with their phone, the software is accessing the camera and the GPS. And the
Right.
GPS says there's a character there. So when the phone comes around like this, the camera sees these two guys, but it sees that GPS location and it puts an image in the picture that you're seeing. So the image appears as if it's really there. Now you won't see it unless you're looking like this, and then you tap it and you get like tokens or points or whatever, and that's just part of the game.
Pokemon is short for Pocket Monster, and the idea of these things.
Yeah, they had to
capture
start with
them,
cards,
and you
remember?
raise them and they can
They
mutate
do
because
things, and the more you-
they get
yeah, and
more
it's-
powerful, and eventually they fight each other. And
The best one was
What about when you accidentally run the phone over a 40,000-pound piece of equipment?
Well, time for a new phone. Yeah,
Or drop a bucket of coolant? Has that
Yeah.
happened?
Hillary did that.
yeah. No, she used a hammer.
Now she says that that one representative.
Oh yeah, Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii.
No reason.
It's just comedy at this point.
Did you see that they've officially changed to a criminal probe now? It's,
Durham.
yeah, they were talking about it today in the news.
What happened?
Been changed to criminal investigation.
Now they can impanel
Russian-
they can impanel a grand jury now, and they can subpoena witnesses and bring them in and take sworn testimony.
But it's,
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that at the Times.
Mhm.
It was the Wall Street Journal.
Several,
On the news last
yeah,
night.
yeah.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, it started last night when it came out. But it's
Well, they're already blaming, they're already saying that Barr is running interference for Trump, and it's all been,
mhm.
just worked over in favor of
Yeah.
Trump. And can't believe any of it, and so on and so forth.
Well, and they're also practicing the classic thing of accusing the other person of what you're doing. As we went to this thing Tuesday night, Ed was there and his wife, and Kim and I, and he had some eye-opening stuff there too. It
talk
was,
about Trump the plumber.
yeah. He said, "I don't care about the plumber. I just want to make sure my drain gets fixed." It was kind of humorous the way he was saying it. And he says, like Trump, he says,
Uncouth.
uncouth. I don't care as long as he gets the country fixed. And
We didn't hire him for etiquette.
no, but we need to pray for him. And of course, you've got these groups that are out there. And then one of the things that I learned was when he was talking about that John Brown Gun Club. The John Brown Gun Club, that guy that attacked the ICE facility in Washington State. If you remember that story, the AOC was defending him, wouldn't condemn him. You know, and basically was justifying what he did. There's a defense. Yeah, trying to kill ICE members. No, he was wearing a cap that had JBGC on the cap, John Brown Gun Club. And there's a chapter of it in Columbus. The John Brown Gun Club is not your average gun club. It's the Antifa militant arm. These are Antifa guys who are training via these gun clubs for armed attacks. And there's another group called the Renegade Rednecks or Redneck Renegades, and it's kind of similar to the John Brown Gun Club.
Yeah.
And they're groups that are out there doing this, and you know, they're falsely labeling the neo-Nazi groups as alt-right and the white identity separatists as alt-right. But when you look at what these guys say, they all admit to being socialists. Well, socialists, just like the Nazis, are anything but alt-right. They're not right anything. They're
See, now, that-
National Socialists. That's what
That
the
is a
Nazis are.
common misconception.
Yeah.
even under a lot of
Yeah.
Highly educated.
Mussolini was a fascist, and so they say he was an ultra right-wing extremist. You know who Mussolini was before he became a dictator? He was the leader of an Italian paper, the editor of an Italian paper called Avante, which in English is forward. Anybody seen that phrase forward used in recent years?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
It was a socialist communist newspaper in Italy, leading one. Mussolini was the editor of the leading communist socialist newspaper. So when he established his fascist government, it wasn't a right-wing government; it was a left-wing government. Fascism is based. Socialism is communism light. Fascism is socialism light. Fascism allows a little more semblance of freedom on the course of business and all that. Socialism establishes more control, or maybe I got it reversed. But at any rate, until you get to those are necessary steps to reach full-fledged communism. The reason mostly that Hitler and Stalin clashed was not because Hitler was far right and Stalin was far left. It was because they were both far left and they had competing visions of what communism should be like.
They don't have conflict. One party's right, one party's wrong.
Mhm.
Both parties think they're right.
Because Stalin and Mao clashed considerably too. One of the largest armed borders in the world was the border of the Soviet Union and China, two communist powers, because Maoist China had one version of communism and Stalinist Russia had another version. They were both
Their
far
versions
left.
were the same. In each case, they want to be the one in charge.
Exactly. And
Redneck Revolt is the other.
Redneck
part of that
Revolt.
John Brown
okay,
Gun
yeah.
Did you hear about the Kevin Sorbo movie that was out last night?
I heard about the movie. Yeah, Reliant.
I only found out about an hour before.
Yeah, I heard about because he was interviewed on the David Webb show about 2 weeks ago. Him and his wife, who I didn't realize his wife, I connected the dots because her last name is Sorbo as well, Sam Sorbo. And some of you may have heard her on the radio or seen some of her stuff online. She's a conservative I don't want to say activist, but columnist, contributor on different things. So I didn't realize that was his wife. So
You said something about people attacking their house and it was something about the Second Amendment, they had guns and things like that. I don't really know.
oh, in the movie, yeah, that was
And
part
there
of
was
the
only a
movie.
one-time showing last night.
Yeah, they're trying to get it out more. Because I remember when they first were putting it together, Kim just called up some things on it. But some of these movies are getting made that try to alert people to these things, as well as movies that are made from a more Christian standpoint. Some of them, like Reliant, are not overtly Christian movies, like say War Room or something like that, but they feature, Christians in a positive light using the Bible and their faith in Christ as something that helps them get through the things that they're going through in the course of the story. So,
That's it. That's that Dennis Prager, it's about some movie, but the First Amendment.
Yeah, so we say that's a one night only thing.
oh, what one's that one?
Prager's new movie with that comedian.
Oh,
No Safe
yeah,
Spaces?
Corelli or something
No
like that.
Safe Spaces.
Yeah.
When's that coming out?
It's one night only. It's airing in Phoenix for one night. And it takes and catches and they sell out.
Yeah, but even then, eventually, some of these things are become available online because they spend all that money making it. They're not going to just throw it away. They'll have it available online eventually. You may have to pay for it to see it initially or something.
Prager's still on YouTube because of the videos that are like respected.
Yeah. And
Yeah, they were taking, I got an email from Prager Review that they were, they're getting ready to go to court. So they rented a truck and
The
video
screens
screens on the side, and they're gonna play the prohibited videos on the truck as they drive.
which is perfectly safe for children of all ages. Nothing improper about any of it.
but they espouse conservative Judeo-Christian worldviews. And
Yeah, he's a little, he does have, pretty conservative, a pretty good, history, it seems to me.
And
Full.
December the 3rd is when that Reliant is gonna come out.
Oh, really? Well, this is a sneak
On
preview.
Well, it's gonna come out on DVD.
oh, December 3rd, yeah.
Jewish, he's definitely not Christian.
No.
No.
That's not what gets you-
Well, yes, we were talking before about some of the difference. You think about it. We have the Old Testament, which is the Jewish scriptures, and we have the New Testament, which they don't accept. And so when it comes to interpreting the Old Testament, we should not feel that we're at a disadvantage because as Christians, we have something they don't have. We have the Holy Spirit in us to help us understand it. And remember, the Bible says an unsaved person can't understand these things. The natural man receiveth not things of God because they're spiritually discerned. So they're foolishness to them. So the thing is that they have, that we don't have, is the understanding of the history and tradition behind the things that we read about. Just like, remember we were talking about the feasts, the Feast of Tabernacles and all, and the different things that they do. They have that history and that tradition down much better than we do, generally speaking. That's where some of these messianic congregations, they were Jewish people who realized that Jesus is the Messiah, and they're saved, but they still worship in a Jewish-like fashion because that's their Jewish heritage. Because like when Kim and I went to that Feast of Tabernacles Seder with the Goldsteins last week, listening to it was an Orthodox rabbi, and as he's going through certain things, a lot of it was reminders of what when our people left Egypt and traveled through the wilderness, they stayed in temporary shelters. When our people, for 3,000 years, our people. So it's communicating their history as an ethnic group.
Right.
As an ethnic group, it's communicating their history to their children, which is fine. But generally speaking, when we're in a church, how many ethnic groups do we have represented here today? So it's kind of hard for us to say, well, our people, our forefathers. Well, my ethnicity is almost, probably 90% British, or the British Isles with a bit of German and a slight bit of French thrown in there. But, mostly English, Scotch, Irish, Welsh, and that sort of stuff. So that's my heritage. But if somebody's heritage is Italian and in that area, maybe south of France or part of Greece or something like that, that's a different heritage. So I can,
Yeah,
some
in
are Germanic
cases,
more.
The closest connection is we're all children of Noah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as a consequence, we in churches, you can see where churches don't do that as much. Some churches do, like say the Mennonites and the Amish, because they're preserving their ethnic origins, because the Mennonites and the Amish, all come from in and around Switzerland and Austria and in that area there. So they're commemorating their history and everything. And so there's some churches like that the people have that ethnicity. But most churches, Christian churches, are a melting pot and a perfect example of there's neither Jew nor Greek in Christ. Because in Christ, it really doesn't matter whether your ancestry's British or Germanic or Italian or Greek or Hungarian or Russian or Sicilian or some part of Africa or Asia or China or Indian or whatever. It doesn't matter, because that's not what we're coming together to emphasize. We're coming together to emphasize the Word of God. But you do get, like the Serbian Orthodox Church. They emphasize not only the Orthodox Church, but their Serbian heritage. Or you go to a Romanian Orthodox Church, or you go to a Korean Baptist church. Well, they're trying to preserve some of their ethnic heritage there.
And that's biblically right.
Yeah, and that's where Ed and I were talking about Messianic congregations one time. Yeah, because
creating a tradition.
Yeah. That's why I say we were talking about Messianic churches one time, and I said I got mixed feelings because in Christ we're all one, but I also see the desire of people who come out of Judaism to preserve some of their history and everything, and it might be a great way of reaching people who are Jewish because they're coming to people who understand. But at the same time, just like with some of these other ones, if the ethnic identity becomes more important than the Christian identity, I didn't say Christian identity for Google's things to pick up on and think we're all Christian identity, because Christian identity is a group to beware of. Lest I go down a rabbit trail here, which I've never done before.
The Goldsteins, they looked comfortable Tuesday night meeting. Even
Oh
when we're talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
Christian
But see, they understand it. They understand that evangelical Christians are the best friends that Jewish people have.
I know.
Because when we were there at that thing at that rabbi's house, they knew that I was a pastor of a Christian church. And unfortunately, when you say Christian, to a lot of these people, they think some form of Catholicism. They don't understand what the Catholics have done to the Baptists down through the millennia. But they would introduce us, and the people were being polite. You could see, oh yeah, that's nice. And then they would say, and they're great friends of Israel. And they go, oh, hey, that's wonderful. See the difference? It would be like, yeah, that's nice. Oh, really? Before they were just being polite, but when they stressed great friends of Israel, all of a sudden they were being welcomed.
Jews that aren't friends of Israel.
No, that's the one synagogue that Beverly used to go to. No, they're not friends.
They're not friends of Israel.
They're not. Yeah. So as a whole, the Orthodox Jews are very supportive of Israel. And when somebody is introduced as a great friend of Israel, all of a sudden they're more welcoming. So we did, remember that, Kim? I remember the rabbi's wife, and we were introduced to her in the kitchen. She was kind of that way. She was busy, and oh, that's nice that you could come. And then Beverly said, and they're great friends of Israel. And she kind of is like, oh, that's wonderful. Just total change. When she says like a magic phrase. And
Did I ever tell you about the miracle of the triangles?
yes, yeah. In fact, I just shared that with somebody earlier this week.
I told that to
Yesterday, in fact.
at this Jewish Messianic group. I'm sitting on a lady at great food, chili and stuff.
Mhm.
No pork.
Yeah.
And hot dogs, turkey, vegan,
My British background, I gotta have
no,
pork
no pork, hot dogs.
and German.
So I told her about the triangles, you know,
Uh,
doorpost to lintel, vertical triangle,
mhm.
the cross, the feet, horizontal triangle pointing down.
Mhm.
Whatever the legs, the triangles on top of each other. Star of David. She said, "Oh yeah, that's cool."
Yeah,
And I said, "See how it points to Jesus?" Yeah.
it is pretty amazing. when you
I
think
told
about
that to a couple of Muslim friends who are peace loving guys,
Mhm.
but they're still Muslim. He said, "Who came up with that? Oh, Jonathan Kahn. Is he a Jew?" Yeah. Yeah. They discount anything. They
Mhm.
recognize what the symbol was, but
it. Yeah,
that's it.
yeah. I showed that to Dr. Dominic yesterday because the Ohio Holocaust Memorial is there on the State House grounds, and it's really kind of neatly done. There's two like stainless steel things that are set up there, and it's got this account of somebody during the concentration camps on there and his rescue. But they're two separate things, and the one side's got some indentions here, and the other side's got some indentions here. It's only when you stand in the right area where the two come together, and it makes the Star of David. You know, so when you're
Tell them about the two triangles.
yeah, and we were standing there. I said, "Look at this." I said, "Somebody just told me this," and he goes, "Wow, that is incredible." So he thought it was pretty impressive. So, but what time is it?
And how the whole started points to Jesus. We don't see it.
Yeah, it's right there. I mean, it's always okay. So, but anyway, do pray for these things. Pray for what's going on down in Columbus. There's other things too, and just thank God that we have an opportunity. We've had leadership both in the political realm and amongst Christians that have been able to preserve our heritages, the opportunities that we have. Because I mean, it really was kind of neat to stand there. I mean, it's the spot where Abraham Lincoln once stood to address the Ohio House. I think it was a combined House and Senate, but so that was kind of fun. Just a nice opportunity.
Well,
So,
we just gotta get you in this.
well, I get over to the Senate now. I just got to get into the Senate. But anyway, let's see. Is there anything else that got coming up? We mentioned, remember, Sunday morning, third floor, 319 or whatever it is, suite. We'll be there Sunday night. Be our usual times. Because remember when we would meet down here on Sunday morning, we had to cancel the morning Bible study because they clean up from the breakfast, but we don't have that, so we'll be up there. All right, let's go ahead and pray. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you again for a good time tonight, good time fellowship this evening. Thank you for each one here this evening, and thank you for a place to meet. Bless, watch over us now, keep us safe as we go out on the roads, and pray that you bless the day tomorrow for your glory. And Sunday especially, we pray your blessing upon it, Lord, and help us again to be a witness for you. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Did it do us any good to pray for George Soros?
I think it never hurts to do so. We started praying for Zuckerberg and Gates because I don't know. I mean, if nobody prays for him, we expect that. But
Some of the questioning from Zuckerberg from the left.
yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to tell you, maybe it's having an effect. Some of the left is getting upset with Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Well, now the three idiots.
We're going to sign off on here. So good night. God bless, and hopefully you'll join us next time.
Questioning they did with